Welcome to the Onside Podcast, a podcast on innovation-driven entrepreneurship. Join us on this journey as we amplify the power of disruptive ideas.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. We're very excited to have you back again for the Onside Podcast, the podcast for innovation-driven entrepreneurship here in Canada. This season, we are taking a deeper dive into women's entrepreneurship across Canada, and we're really here today to highlight some of the most amazing women entrepreneurs and leaders who are working to make our startup ecosystem more inclusive and driving change. This fireside chat is being brought to you as a part of the Start Now Incubator, a project that's being led by Onside, which is looking to support diverse and intersectional women and rural women across Canada to start and grow their businesses. We're being supported through the Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy, so we're super excited and happy about that. And in our next episode, or in this episode, I should say, we are so thankful and grateful to be joined by Amy Gordinier, the founder of SkinFix. SkinFix is a clean and clinically proven skincare brand that creates innovative skin barrier health solutions, delivering visible and tangible results. Amy Gordinier, who discovered a powerful 19th century formula for treating eczema, SkinFix is driven by curiosity, advanced science, and validated by dermatology. Amy and SkinFix are committed to creating clean, effective, and environmentally mindful skincare products and solutions. SkinFix products are fragrance-free, cruelty-free, vegan, which I'm not sure what vegan is, you can tell me about that later, catering to consumers who prioritize efficiency and sustainability. The brand is also recognized by Sephora with the highest clean and sustainable standards with the New Planet Aware seal. Ooh, that's pretty cool. And further solidifying its position as a leader in the skincare space. So we're very excited to learn more about SkinFix and more about you, Amy, and your journey in becoming an entrepreneur, and about your experience and background, of course, and the perspective of a woman entrepreneur. And I'm happy to have you here at our show today.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me, Alex. This is fun.
I was really excited when I was kind of taking a look at your background. Obviously, I know SkinFix. I am a personal eczema sufferer myself, so I've been following your brand and all that kind of stuff for a while. But what I didn't know was a little bit about your background, where you kind of started out way back in the day as a religious studies major at Princeton. So I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. We were talking about, I had gone to University of Virginia. I almost studied religious studies as well. So I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting.
Anthropology is pretty close.
Anthropology, yeah. I did a lot of alternative things back in the day. Yeah. And I was kind of curious, like how you went from studying religious studies at Princeton and then going on to get involved in the beauty industry and basically creating a beauty brand here in Canada. Like what drew you from that to where you are now?
Yeah, I suspect you and I have sort of similar paths in that sense because you studied Asian studies and anthropology at UVA. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm a big believer for starters in the humanities. I just am. I kind of feel like in the undergrad time, if you're not a STEM or engineer sort of major, I'm a huge fan of the humanities just to learn how to think and understand people and understand backgrounds. I think religion actually is so perfectly aligned with marketing, really. Kind of understanding what motivates people, what underlies their belief systems. I feel like it's actually the perfect major for marketing. But I got out of Princeton with no idea what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to do investment banking. I wasn't able to do investment banking or consulting. So I just loved the beauty industry. My father actually had worked at Estee Lauder when I was really young. He ran manufacturing. He was actually an engineer. And so I was like, let me check out beauty. So I just kind of put my resume out. And L'Oreal actually hired me because I was a religious studies major, because they love quirky people and they love people with different backgrounds who can bring different perspectives. They really kind of pride themselves on that. So that actually helped me get my foot in the door as a product manager at L'Oreal, which is, I was really, really lucky. Today, that would be an MBA level job. And I kind of snuck in 1992 and had no idea what I was doing, but really learned a ton on the job at L'Oreal. It was an amazing experience. So
that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that, because you mentioned I studied anthropology as well, and somehow or another I ended up in finance.
Right. There you go.
And a lot of people who knew me were like, how'd you go from anthropology into finance?
Yeah.
But similar kind of thinking, I think, at the time. I ended up working in export finance, and I think some of the reason was they were looking for people who had different points of view, different experiences, who could learn the skills. But different kinds of competencies, cultural, et cetera, are sometimes harder to train and a little bit more innate.
Yeah,
So,
I think it's more of a U.S. phenomenon, sadly. I feel like Canada's more pre-professional. I think in the U.S. there's a little more of an understanding of the liberal arts and how important they can be in different industries. So I think you and I were lucky in that sense because we were given a shot in business.
Yes. I did a lot of on-the-ground training. Actually, in fact, one of the things in my early career when I was going into export finance, I was doing some training, and I also was very interested in the beauty industry.
Okay.
And I remember doing a case study on Shiseido.
Oh, okay.
And that's a kind of, analyzing financial statements and, this kind of fun stuff.
Yeah.
And that's when I really, in market analysis, and I was like, wow, the beauty industry is huge. The amount of money and revenue and products and services in the supply chain, I had not really thought about it from a business standpoint. And I do find it interesting a lot of times people, we do a lot of innovation-based work and tech-based work, or try and encourage people to pursue some of those ideas. And a lot of times people, don't think that that's there for beauty or health and wellness or those kinds of spaces. But
it's a formidable industry. It is. I mean, really any major, any sort of focus could go into beauty, because you've got chemists in the lab, you've got product developers who are sort of more creative and sort of bridge the gap between marketing and chemistry. You've got finance folks, you've got logistics and warehousing folks. You've got kind of every discipline in that business, and it's a great industry.
Yeah. So when you were thinking about, so you had a little background and started getting started, right after Princeton, and said, okay, maybe this might be kind of fun.
Yeah.
And then I understand you also found a very interesting formulation, which kind of led to, I guess, the creation or the birth of Skin Fix. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about that? Because I do want to talk about innovation and cool stuff as well, but I think that's kind of like the starting point.
The origin story. So I worked at L'Oreal for 5 years, then went to France for business school. I went to a school called INSEAD because it was only 10 months, so it was cheaper. I was paying for it myself. I was in and out, and also all of the L'Oreal sort of senior execs had gone there, so I aspired to go back to L'Oreal. I ended up then going to Coty because there was a L'Oreal alum who kind of wooed me to Coty, tried that for 2 years, and then decided I wanted to live in Europe again. So I moved back to London and worked for Estee Lauder on a brand called Jo Malone, which is one of their big fragrance brands. And Jo had just sold her business to Lauder. So I was the first sort of professional marketer to come into the business and kind of help them. They were in their earn-out phase, which means they've sold the business, but they still have to hit certain targets to get sort of a second chunk of their money, of their payout. So that was an incredible experience. It was high stress, but it was really interesting to sort of understand how that all worked. I got to work directly with Jo and learn how to make fragrance, which is my favorite category. And then I had met at INSEAD, I had met a Haligonian. So we decided, we had lived in London for 5 years and it was too expensive. I was pregnant with my first baby. We moved back to Nova Scotia. And I worked here for a number of years doing odd things. I worked at Mills Department Store creating a beauty floor for them. And then I went and worked for Ocean Nutrition Canada doing marketing for fish oil in the supplement space. And then I met a woman named Karen Warner from Sackville who had an incredible formula that people had told me about. It was sort of this healing balm that women swore by as a diaper cream. Other people told me it was great for eczema, psoriasis. And I met with Karen, actually, Krista Bezanson from ACOA introduced me to her and said, maybe you can help her with a marketing plan. And we're looking to give her an investment, but she needs to find a matching equity investment. So I was helping her raise some money. She turned to me one day and she said, why don't you just buy this brand? You really have a passion. But what I loved about the formula is that it had a lot of active ingredients in it. Typically, back in the day in beauty, you would sort of sprinkle an active in and build a marketing story. And this had 4 Health Canada approved OTC active ingredients in it. But what I really, really loved is that over the decades that the family had been making this formula, it was originally created, compounded in 1870 in Yorkshire, England by her great-great-grandfather. They had emigrated to Canada in the early 1900s, and they continued to make it out of their home. And over the decades, they had collected literally hundreds of testimonials, letters from people who really poured their hearts out about how it had helped with diabetic foot ulcers. It had helped with a mother whose child had eczema and couldn't play in the sandbox at school because of the open wounds, and all sorts of things that people had been suffering with. And they talked about the emotional impact of these skin issues on their lives and their quality of life, and how this product had helped heal their skin when nothing else had worked. So that's really what got me. I said, I love beauty. I love the skincare space, but I really love this idea that it's a beauty product that's truly helping people. It was truly a wellness product. So I mortgaged my house and begged for investment from family and friends, and bought the business from the original founder and started the company sort of 2.0 here in Halifax.
Okay. Well, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, I think it's really interesting about the active ingredients and finding things that actually work. I too am an eczema sufferer, so I am constantly trying to keep my skin healthy, keep it hydrated, not let things kind of irritate me. And it is you talk about kind of the emotional impact.
Yes.
When you're very uncomfortable, or if you're a small child and you're scratching, or you can't go out to school, or you have it on your face, it really has also has an emotional component in addition to your physical as well. So
it definitely does. And it's really gratifying even today to read the testimonials that roll in on a daily basis, not just about our eczema products or our sort of therapeutics, but also even just about our barrier line that really helps to heal the skin barrier and give you healthier skin. We just get, the amount of passion and love for this product is kind of crazy. We have the highest loyalty and repurchase rate of any skincare product at Sephora North America, which is a huge testament to how well the formula, all based on the original balm, work to help heal people's skin. And that feels really good. It's not just a beauty product that it's not just a commercial endeavor. It's really a sort of a purpose-driven business in that sense.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And you mentioned a little bit when you were kind of getting started, and I've heard this from a few people, borrowing, convincing your family. What was that like when you were trying to tell people, I have this great idea. I swear this is going to be, worth it, or how did you convince people that this was like the right path? And were there any people kind of along the way that you felt really helped you? You mentioned ACOA, which is Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency. So how did you convince people? And then were there some folks along the way that you thought were instrumental?
Yeah, frankly, it was mostly people like my father and my brother initially, and friends, because it was very hard to convince people who weren't sort of connected to me and didn't feel a sense of obligation, very honestly. But I was also really lucky to connect with a local family office / private equity that I ended up, having a personal connection to, who really were the ones that gave us a material amount of money to get started and continued to fund us even when, frankly, maybe they shouldn't have, the years that were really tough, and they continued to invest in us because we had started in the mass market. We launched at Target in the U.S. in full distribution, and then we launched at Shoppers Drug Mart. We were on QVC for a bit, and then we kind of decided to take a look at our distribution. And it was a moment when we really had an opportunity to launch at Sephora, when Sephora was really leaning into this idea of clean and therapeutic. But that took a lot of investment to kind of reboot the company in 2019. And so this family office here in Nova Scotia, but then also my brother, were really instrumental in saying, okay, we're going to back you to go for it, sort of Skin Fix 3.0. And I was really lucky in that sense, because that's a very unusual set of circumstances, and I'm very grateful for it. But I'm also I understand very deeply, especially because I work with a lot of entrepreneurs in the beauty space, that isn't a normal situation. And it gave me an advantage, frankly, to keep going during the years when I might not have made it.
Yeah. Do you think I hear this a lot as well. A lot of early stage companies, get out there, they get investment, either angel investment or maybe if they're lucky, some VC, things like that.
Yeah.
And there's kind of this like fine line of finding the right investment partners,
yes,
who can either help you or in some cases like drag you down. And it sounds like you were fortunate enough to find people who could see that you were making traction in Target and other places and kind of more retail locations. Was there something that was there that allowed you to get the good advice, or was there something that was really helpful in that experience of working with the family office or your brother that helped you like tip the scales or receive some good advice around how to switch up or reposition the company?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I think the value that those two investors brought was really financial. So they really kind of helped with the financial discipline of the company, but also just encouragement. A lot of times just, hey, this is a really strong concept. You're early in, but we believe in it and we believe in the potential of it. Because we were really the first brand to do what we do, which is clean, clinical, initially therapeutics, and then sort of skin barrier health. But we now have another investor. We did get a private equity investor from the beauty space about 2.5 years ago, coming up on 3 years now, called Stride Consumer Partners. And they had been invested in Tatcha, which sold to Unilever, Urban Decay, which sold to L'Oreal, Dry Bar, which was a hair concept in the US, and forgetting the fourth. But they had had a lot of really big successes in beauty. And we were their first. A couple of partners had spun off and created a new entity called Stride, and we were their very first investment. So that was a huge sort of accolade for us. I think it was told us that, okay, now we're really a legitimate company that an outside investor who has this level of knowledge would invest. And they have an operating partner who's been at L'Oreal she was at L'Oreal for 25 years, worked her way through different brands in the organization, and then was in the mergers and acquisitions department before going to Stride. So that's a whole nother level of help and advice and partnership than what we had with our initial investors, who were incredibly helpful, but just the level of the board meeting dialogue now, the level of direction, the level of help in recruiting. We're bringing on a CEO who starts on Monday. So excited. Who's come from L'Oreal. And Stride has been incredibly instrumental in that sense. So I think it's really helpful to have beauty industry experience at the table.
So you were able to get that kind of initial people to keep you going, cheerleading, keep go, and then you were able to get even more investors, but ones that had more deep industry knowledge that could pull you along and give you the kind of strategic and market advice to move things along.
Yeah, and I would say, for anyone who might be listening or watching who's an aspiring entrepreneur, I would get that beauty industry help earlier if I were to go back. And there are so many associations and incubators and things like the Sephora Accelerate program that's very focused on women entrepreneurs and diversity. There's a whole whack of mentorship groups now in beauty that didn't exist when I started. And especially if you're coming from a place like Nova Scotia or even Canada, or someplace rural where you're not connected to the beauty industry the way I was, and you don't know people who can give you mentorship advice, I would say plug in as early as possible, because there is a recipe. It doesn't mean everyone will make it, but there are certain fundamentals that you don't have time to learn, and you don't want to waste money learning that folks can give you right out of the gate. So I would say, when I look at somebody like Barb Stegman of the 7 Virtues, who's one of my best friends, she plugged into the Sephora Accelerate, and they taught her a lot of things about beauty. And then she took an investment from Unilever Ventures and True Beauty Ventures, who are big beauty investors, and they're also guiding her in a way that has been game-changing. So I would say plug into that early on, because they're just some industry things that you need to know out of the gate would be my advice.
I'm curious. I was probably going to ask this later, but I was like, you brought it up. So I was like, what are the top a couple of things that you wish you had known? So you said get connected, get to an incubator, Sephora, is it called Accelerate?
Yeah.
And if you're super, super early, you can also check out our Start Now incubator. There's lots of things that are out there. But what are maybe a couple things you wish that you had known sooner, or that you think other people who are entering the kind of beauty industry should know sooner?
Yeah, I mean, so many things. It's hard. So many mistakes. Call me up, take me for coffee, and I'll tell you all of them. I think one of them is that, well, two things that are somewhat contradictory in a way. Like, you do need a certain amount of money. A friend of mine who is he's the editor of Beauty Independent, which is one of the big beauty industry publications, a really smart guy, has kind of done a case study and said, in his mind, you need $2 million to like get traction, to even like get over the hump. And that's probably at Sephora, because they help a lot, and they give incubation funding, and they give a lot of marketing support. If you're going in mass, it's probably more than that. But he's sort of said this idea that you can do it with a couple $100,000 is a bit of a misnomer, because sure, you can produce a product and get it out there on shelf or on D2C, but really in his mind, you need $2 million US to get yourself to traction. And I think he's probably right. But the flip side of that is you can also overspend. And I think that's what we fell victim to, because we were, with investors who had sort of big dreams and big ideas, who are used to building billion-dollar companies, and they were like, go for it. Let's compete with CeraVe. And that was ridiculous. We shouldn't have tried. So out of the gate, we spent a lot of money really trying to compete with these. We were on a shelf with CeraVe and Aveeno and all these big brands owned by big multinationals. And we were the first clean brand to be put in the conventional set and the conventional planogram at Target. So we tried to compete, and that was really dumb. And I think one of our mistakes too is we did a national launch with Target, all 1,800 doors in one go. They don't do that today, because what they've found is it just doesn't work. So regional markets where you can focus your marketing efforts and you can focus your sales efforts and you can kind of get your feet under you at a retailer like a Target would have been a better way to go. But yeah, I think just, you need a certain amount of capital, but also don't overspend. Try to really show some financial, diligence, and just be really bootstrap as much as you can.
Yeah. And that's probably true. Maybe you do need $2 million. Do you need it on day one?
Right.
Maybe not. So those incremental, you probably do over to get to where you need to be. But so anyone who heard $2 million, you don't have to start off on day one with $2 million. But I think I think that's a fair, target or an idea to keep in mind. Some people might be more, some people less, depending on.
Yeah. Just know that there's a pipeline that you're going to kind of need to know where it's coming from eventually, because I think what happens in beauty is there's such low barriers to entry that you can go to a contract manufacturer and probably have a product on shelf in a couple of months. If you buy formulas and you pick stock packaging and you put your brand on it. And I think what's important to understand is, a lot of people can get an investment of $100,000 or $200,000, but they need to kind of have an idea of where there could be a pipeline. To your point, they don't need it day one, but they probably need it in the first couple of years. And I think we've seen a lot of brands in the beauty graveyard in the last 5 years who just didn't have that pipeline.
Yeah. A couple of weeks ago here in Halifax, they have the Wonder Woman conference. And Jen Harper, who is the founder of Cheekbone Beauty, she was there. I got a picture with her. I was like, oh, this is so cool. She had on a pink suit. So she kind of told her story as well, and her journey to getting into Sephora and trials and tribulations and things like that. So I think, it might start small or in your basement or something like that, but to get to where you are or where Jen has been able to get the support and the financing you need along the way might be a bit more than maybe people are thinking.
And I think too, just sort of understanding, you have a finance background, kind of, okay, well, what are the benchmarks that I'm going to need to hit to activate that next level of funding as well? Just kind of understand, like, what does success look like? Launching at retail is unfortunately not success. It's actually a lot easier than you think it is. Getting into a Sephora is hard, but there are a lot of brands that get there and don't make it. So sort of like, okay, well, what is making sure you talk to the retailer and say, well, what does success look like? What do I need to achieve to get to from 4 SKUs to 1 shelf, from 1 shelf to 2 shelves, from 2 shelves to a gondola, so that you kind of understand, what that trajectory will look like, and then you can make your case to investors along the way that you're hitting those benchmarks and you're showing success and momentum and unlock more funding. But it's tough. The funding part is the hardest part, I think.
Yeah, I think, and the mental fortitude.
Yeah,
the mental fortitude. Yeah, to keep it going.
Yeah.
Well, one thing you've touched on, and you've mentioned a couple of your, brands and things like that, or areas of themes of focus. I'm always interested in this, especially for beauty or health and wellness, or pretty much anything. What's the role that curiosity and innovation kind of play with Skin Fix? Because you started out with one, formula, one product.
Yeah.
And when I go to Sephora, I see a whole shelf full of wonderful things that I'm rubbing on myself. Yeah. So what is the role that kind of curiosity and innovation play kind of in your?
It's huge. I mean, product is the engine. If you're a Sephora brand in particular, I think, marketing is incredibly important, but product is the engine, and it really starts with product. And Sephora won't put a product on shelf unless they think it's innovative. And sure, there's some aspect of Me Too. There's some aspect of, we see a lot of momentum in this category, so we're going to launch a product in that category, but you better bring some point of differentiation or they're not going to take it. And when they're 80% of your distribution, if they don't take it, you don't make it.
Yeah.
So I always say that to my team. I'm like, if they don't like it, we don't have anywhere else to launch it. We can launch it on our own .com, but it's not going to be enough volume. So curiosity is really important. And I think in the case of Skin Fix, because we were such a specialized brand, we were building products from the ground up to treat skin concerns and doing it with clean ingredients, which was really challenging and difficult. I had to really get a deep understanding of skincare chemistry. And a lot of brands will go to a contract manufacturer and they have a library of formulas and they'll take one and they might tweak it to become theirs. We build from the ground up because we're treating a skin disease and I need to work with derms. I need to understand what's out there in terms of prescription therapeutics and what's out there in terms of natural ingredients that have clinical efficacy, because I've got to also make sure that the derms are going to be on board with what we develop. We sell in derm offices as well. And then every single ingredient is thoughtfully put together and stacked to deliver on our proposition. And then we put our products through clinical testing that's pretty rigorous to show if it delivers. So curiosity is super important because we've got to first come up with something that doesn't yet exist on the shelves of Sephora in some way, shape, or form. And then we've got to really kind of dig in and build it. And not only do we have to deliver the ingredients, we have to deliver on texture, we have to deliver on packaging experience, on color. The whole sensorial side of beauty is really important, especially in a Sephora environment. So curiosity is kind of everything. I happen to absolutely love product development, so I'm blessed. It's the most fun side of the business, but yeah.
I think that's, I'm sure people who are in the different departments probably think their department is the most fun, but definitely a very creative spot inside.
It is.
Coming up with new ideas and new formulations and looking at different ingredients. And
I love it. Yeah. Going to the ingredient shows and talking to the R&D folks and working with the chemists it's my happy place.
Yeah. I have to admit, I've been to a few ingredient conferences myself. Okay. And they can be overwhelming with the sheer amount of new things that are out there, but so fascinating, especially, things coming from different parts of the world.
Yeah. And, do you go for the supplement?
I've gone for a Supply Side West.
Yes, and, those are great.
They are great. They're a little overwhelming.
They are. They're big. You have to kind of have a strategy going in because you can't see everything.
Exactly. And then you leave. And I learned this from going to a few other things. I used to go to some food and kind of health and wellness conferences like in Geneva and places like this. And in the beginning, I'd get so excited and I'd try every cream. If it was like a CBD cream, and I'd be taking all kinds of supplements and eating all this. And after about 2 hours, and I was like, oh my God, how many different kinds of vitamins and supplements and creams have I run on myself? I was like, this is probably dangerous. I should probably stop.
Right.
My curiosity might kill me.
Yeah. No, it's so true. Yeah.
Well, I know that, the company has been growing and the product line has been growing, and Skin Fix is headquartered in New York City. What led to the decision to headquarter the company in New York City, and like what advantage or benefit do you get from? I mean, it's New York, so
Yeah, there's that. No, I mean, it's a good question. I mean, COVID happened, and we had an office down on Lower Water Street in the Brewery Market on the third floor, which we loved, which was beautiful, and then COVID happened, and our lease was just coming to an end, thankfully. So we all went work from home. And then a year into COVID, 2 years into COVID, I guess, it was the end of 22, we got an equity investment from Stride Consumer Partners. And they sort of said to me, Amy, you guys are growing really, really fast, and we need to double your team. But the beauty industry is based in LA or New York, really, truly. If we're going to get the kind of talent we need to do some of these functions, we need to be based in New York or LA, so you choose. So I chose New York because it's a direct flight.
Yes, 100%.
It's on the Eastern time zone, even though my parents are out in California, but LA is just too much of a schlep to get to on a regular basis. So we chose New York. We opened our office there in January of this year. So pretty recently, the team there has been remote too. So we still have a core group here in Nova Scotia, our entire operations group, one of our creative directors, myself, and then we have obviously a sales organization in Canada. We still make everything in Canada, all of our contract manufacturers except one product. Everything else is made in Toronto. We use a lot of consultants and resources based in Canada. So we still pride ourselves on very much being a Canadian brand, but we do have an office in New York now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, if you're at the center of beauty or fashion, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I've heard the same thing actually in the life sciences sector. We have a growing sector here in Nova Scotia, and same kind of pull for Boston. Where we have some very interesting MIT and just all kinds of all the hospitals and things like that, and the researchers and Moderna, so same makes kind sense. Of thing where we have some really great talent and things popping up here in Nova Scotia and Canada, but some of that additional expertise is in places like Boston and New York. And if we can tap into that or access that, it's helping us to grow and reach new markets, really.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But we still are very sort of dedicated to our Canadian roots as a brand, SkinFix. Our new CEO, he's actually from South Africa originally, but he ran a division of L'Oreal in Canada for a few years, which was really appealing to me. He's been to Halifax. He knows Canada. He loves Canada. And it was important to me that we had someone that could really identify with our Canadian heritage, because it's important. We're very proud of it. Barb and I both are very proud of being sort of the two Nova Scotian beauty brands at Sephora.
I love it. And I love her fragrances as well. So I always check those out.
Yeah, she's amazing. I don't know if you've been to her atelier down on the waterfront yet.
I have not.
I'm going to
You
can make your own fragrance. My daughter's working there. She's in love with it and in love with Barb. She's such an incredible human being, but it's really cool. It's at Queen's Mark next to Bar Sophia, and I encourage everyone to go. Make your own perfume, spend an hour there. It's just like Alice in Wonderland.
Random. Well, I'm definitely going to do that. We have team time every month, so maybe we have to do a little team time and make some perfume. I see the team is over there in the window. They're looking. They're like, yes, let's.
Yes, she does group events, and she'll bring out Prosecco and do it. It's super fun.
That's so well. You know what? I've never met Barb Sackman, but indirectly, she's one of the reasons why I'm here in Halifax, because she saw my husband Kevin speak at a conference, I think in Vancouver, or I don't know. We were living in Washington, D.C. at the time.
Oh my gosh.
She saw him speaking at a conference. We were working in the States, and she connected with Sarah Young from Sandpiper and National, and was like, hey, there's somebody really interesting I think you should take a look at and talk to Kevin. And she came down to Washington, D.C. I think her brother worked at the World Bank or something. And so indirectly, I've never met Barb, but indirectly, she's the reason why I'm here in Halifax.
That's amazing. You have to have her on your podcast. She's an inspirational speaker, motivational speaker, and she has an incredible story born and raised in rural Nova Scotia. I think she'd be a good guest.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll add her to the list.
Yeah, if you want me to connect you. I'm sure you're still connected. But.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. Well, I do want to talk a little bit. I mentioned a little bit about your growing line of things at Sephora. I've noticed over the years, it's like getting bigger. You have like your own little section there.
We do. In Canada, we're moving to the 6 shelves on the wall this year.
That's a big accomplishment.
Yeah, we're excited.
Yeah. Well, why don't you tell me a little bit about some of the new products and things that you guys have been able to create and kind of what led to those?
Yeah, so I think the most exciting thing we did this year was we actually created a patented complex for skin barrier health. So we're sort of the first brand. We've been working, when I started developing products in the therapeutic space, so eczema, rosacea, KP, et cetera, I was working directly with dermatologists. One of the first things I did is I took the original product to a derm in Toronto and I said, what do you think of this? And she said, I love it. You need to do some clinicals. We started working together. So I've been working with the dermatologist community in North America for a decade. We have a scientific advisory board of 4 of the top derms in the region in North America. And as I was working on products with them, they kept talking about skin barrier health. Skin barrier health. It's kind of at the root of everything. If you have acne, if you have eczema, if you have rosacea, there's some sort of dysbiosis or imbalance in the skin barrier. So I got really curious about the barrier itself and really dug in to understand what was going on and how we might be able to treat the barrier and kind of bring skin back to a state of health so that there was less incidence of skin issues. And so Barrier, we're known at Sephora for being the brand that brought skin barrier to Sephora. Now it's the hottest category of skincare today. So we're sort of thinking all the time about, okay, how do we continue to show our superiority in this space? And we looked at a lot of ingredients and figured out how we could create a complex that has incredible efficacy for doing things like increasing the actual ceramides in your skin, increasing the fatty acids, increasing the aquaporin production, increasing things like filaggrin. So we did some exhaustive studies at the in vitro and in vivo level to prove that we were actually changing the physiology of the skin. So we relaunched our hero products, our triple lipid peptide cream, which is a top 3 moisturizer at Sephora, and our skin barrier gel restoring cream with this patented complex in it. So that was kind of the most exciting thing we did this year. And then we're pulling it through every other product in our line now, and really sort of everything starts with skin barrier health first. Let's get the skin barrier in balance, and then we sort of add the actives on top that are treating whatever concern we're looking at. So we also launched a new cleanser in June. That is really interesting. It's the first cleanser at Sephora that is clinically proven to remove sunscreen in one cleanse. Ooh. So we tried it with a waterproof.
I got to get that.
Yeah,
especially in the summer.
We want, as a derm brand, we want everyone wearing sunscreen, but we want you also removing it. There's no value in having sunscreen on while you go to sleep. So it takes sunscreen off in one cleanse, and then it has a really cool ingredient that helps protect the barrier when you cleanse. So that's our latest innovation, and more to come.
That sounds. Well, I'm anything. As I said, I've had skin problems my kind of whole life, so appreciate the sunscreen issue and getting it off. And then, if your skin's too dry, especially if you have eczema or something else, like your skin gets cracky. And I try my best to stay away from all kinds of things that are steroids, and it as a precipitous cycle. So I'm really looking forward to checking these things out and trying.
Well, I'll send you some. I'll send your team some.
Well, that sounds amazing. I forgot to ask you this when we were talking a little bit about New York and kind of what's happening there. But obviously, you are a female founder, a woman founder. Yeah. And you mentioned kind of over COVID, recognizing an opportunity to move into the U.S. market a little bit further with your company, get resources and people and talent to really help your company grow while keeping true to the Nova Scotian Canadian roots. But I'm actually kind of curious around what's that transition been like. To be a female founder who's from Canada and now kind of operating in the U.S. environment. What is that like?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a unique case because, like you, I'm actually American originally. And so I'm dual. I've lived here for 20 years.
Same.
And I worked in the beauty industry in the US. So I think that Barb and I talk a lot about this because I really mentored her and connected her and plugged her in and really pushed her to get to New York and to go to things like the Women's Wear CEO Summit, to get involved with CEW, to get involved with Beauty Independent, Beauty Matter, because it's really important to be visible in that ecosystem. And so I was lucky because I came from the ecosystem, so it was natural for me, and I still have a lot of friends and colleagues in beauty, so I kind of plugged right back in. I've talked to Jen Harper also about that. I think it's really important. There are a lot of people in that community that can support you and can help you and can connect you. And the U.S. is, a much bigger market in beauty than Canada, although Sephora Canada punches above its weight and is 30% of the North American market for them. So it's a big chunk of the business, and Sephora Canada are great partners. But yeah, I was lucky because I kind of already had that embedded sort of connection. But it's important to spend time going to some of those industry events and networking for sure.
Yeah. Well, luckily, it's a lot easier to do nowadays, like in person and getting back out there. That it was a challenge, and I think for women entrepreneurs, kind of starting out, you're lucky you had some connections and had kind of
totally
at least had some investment on the way, but. If you were trying to launch during COVID.
It was tough, but be bold, reach out to people like me, reach out to people like Barb. If you aspire to be in the beauty industry or you're getting started in the beauty industry, we're happy to help. We're happy to connect people. Just the way that Barb connected your husband to Sarah Young, like we just, don't be afraid to reach out to people in the industry that you want to be in or the industry that you are in who have connections, and ask them to help network you or give you advice. I think it's really important. And there are also, now that we can go in person, there are tons of grants.
Yes.
The Canadian government is amazing at supporting young business in Nova Scotia in particular. So there are tons of grants that you can get to go to these conferences supported by the government. And I would encourage you to do that.
Well, what's something that you love about the beauty industry? And then maybe I was going to say, what's something that you hate, but I'll change that up to maybe what's something that you didn't expect?
Yeah, I mean, I love this combination of creativity and business. As a religion major, I ended up getting an MBA because L'Oreal told me I had to, but I really was not my jam at all. I barely graduated. I was like, oh. But I love this combination of creativity, and it's highly competitive. It's very strategic. It's hardcore business, but it's also just really creative and fun and interesting. I think what is hard is that it is incredibly competitive. And that, especially in this age of social media and social media influencers, we're facing an onslaught of brands that are founded by influencers and dermatologists and cosmetic chemists who have platforms and have sort of embedded communities of people, and they're able to scale really quickly. And, it's not for the faint of heart. I don't think any industry is, honestly. If there's, an industry that has momentum, there's lots of people jumping in, but it's really competitive. You've got to be on your toes all the time. Your nervous system is kind of always on overdrive. You're always looking over your shoulder, checking out what's going on. And competition is good. And there are definitely, in our case, clinical brands jumping in, talking about skin barrier health helps everybody, and all boats rise. And we love to see the conversation. And it's tough to hold on to your shelf space. So I think that's the flip side of it.
Yeah, definitely. I've dabbled in a few things with side hustles, so I relate to that, and I attest to the love and the passion and the like. Oh my God, the struggles of trying to scale up and to get things going where you want them to go. So it's a challenge. Well, we're getting close to our time here, which I'm like, oh, boo-hoo, because I'm having such a good time chatting with you.
Me too.
But you did give some tips or things a little bit earlier on for folks that are interested in the beauty industry and pursuing kind of an entrepreneurial journey in beauty, health, wellness. So one of the things we're doing at Onside and with our Start Now incubator is we're really trying to figure out ways that we can draw rural women or underrepresented groups or BIPOC folks into entrepreneurship. And a lot of people love this space in health and wellness and beauty. Do you have any thoughts or recommendations, additional, I suppose, for folks that are maybe coming from some of those communities that are women or who are thinking about this and, trying to take that first step?
Yeah. I mean, I think, the first step is to have a good idea. You need to kind of have an idea that has some viability as a business. And then, at least in beauty, which is the industry I've been in my whole career, and I know there are so many avenues for the women you've described, for BIPOC, for underrepresented communities. There are so many now incubators and funds within Canada and outside of Canada. It's really exciting to see. A friend of mine, Nancy Twine, who was the founder of Briogeo, I don't know if you know that hair care brand, they sold to Wella a couple of years ago. And she's thrown herself into creating opportunities for women of color to become entrepreneurs. And she's putting her money into fund and help and linking them with people to mentor. She's really giving back. And there are lots of women founders and founders in general in beauty like her, and lots of organizations. Sephora is really passionate. There's True Beauty Ventures is another group that does as sort of an incubator accelerate. So there are some really interesting programs. They're competitive. You have to have a really good idea. You don't necessarily have gotten started yet, but you have to have a plan, and you have to have a good concept and a good idea. But if you do, they will literally take you and plug you into manufacturers and explain what cost of goods should look like and help you with your P&L and help you with your investment pipeline. And it's amazing. And I don't think that existed even 10 years ago. So there are incredible opportunities, and people should not feel intimidated just because you haven't had my background and my access to beauty from the get-go. I'm an anomaly in beauty. There are more people that don't have my background. And in some ways, I think you're more successful when you come at it from a completely different perspective. I mean, Barb will tell you that if you ever on the podcast. Not understanding the beauty industry was a helpful aspect for her because she came at it with a completely different perspective. And has been wildly successful. So there are a lot of resources, both within Canada and outside of Canada, and a lot of people that want to help and want to connect and want to really help the next generation. So go for it.
I love it. Well, part of the reason why our incubator that we're running at Onside is called Start Now. It's called Start Now Incubator. And it's for very early stage ideas, which we're literally like, just start. And we'll help you get to the kind of the next phase. And you're right now through the Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy, which is in Canada, there's a lot of funding that's available for women going into retail, women going into tech, just all kinds of things that are out there. So I really want to encourage anyone who's listening to maybe listen to some of the resources that Amy has suggested and Google, look up all those good things. Onside, Start Now Incubator, and Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy. You'll find tons of resources.
Yeah, and reach out to people in those industries to help vet your ideas. And not everybody will respond, but some people will. And you'll get people that'll be willing to look at your business plan and give you feedback and just, be bold.
Yeah. Well, if people want to learn more about Skin Fix or you or things you've got going on or your cool products that are coming out, what are some ways that people can connect with you or Skin Fix or learn a bit more?
Social media, Instagram, we're Skin Fix Inc., TikTok, of course, the dreaded TikTok, but we are on there. That's a great channel for us. We do a lot of education through our social channels. We post some things on LinkedIn about what I'm up to. I'm not personally very active on social, so you'll be very disappointed if you follow me, but you're welcome to. You'll see the odd post of my dogs and my kids, and that'll be it.
Yeah.
But yeah, also our website.
Okay.
Is a great resource.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, I want to thank you for coming here today. For anyone who wants to learn more about the Onside podcast, you can find out more information on our website, which is onsidenow.ca. To find out about programs that support women entrepreneurs, you can go to Start Now Incubator. Gosh, such a long word. It used to be Start Now Inc., but it went to startnowincubator.ca. And you can check out our programs and all that kind of good stuff, and follow us on social media and fun things. And we're so happy that you joined us.
Thank you, Alex. This was so fun. This was great. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Loved it.
Okay. Thanks so much, everybody. And we'll be seeing you. So tune into our next episode later on this season. Thanks so much.
Amazing. Bye.